Well, good afternoon, everyone. Going last always has its advantages. For the crowd, you don't have to pay much attention. Luckily, I'm not here to give you any insights that you already haven't heard of probably in the last 48 hours. This session was supposed to also be run by someone by the name of Bill, whom I don't know personally, but apparently had a fire in his backyard and couldn't show up today. So that was my opportunity for showing up here and maybe presenting a little bit about what my tiny little startup faces in the context of sales, sales enablement, sales leadership, and just sales problems in general. So I'll kick off by saying that we're not a noodle company. So it's classic. Like everywhere I go, it's a great icebreaker. People are like, so do you make noodles? And I'm like, no, it's just quite the opposite. I'll get to what we do and how complicated it is in the world that I sell in. And I'm a sales leader, I'm sales enablement, I'm sales strategy, I'm everything sales. And my question earlier for Dixon was around that. We are a tiny little startup based out of San Francisco. We've been around for 9 years. So we've seen multiple pivots along the way, as you can imagine, have had to constantly reinvent, reiterate, redefine what sales means to us and what does a sales organization look like in the context of our startup, right? So the challenges are very different, and I don't have solutions, but at least an interesting 15 minutes to share a little bit about our journey and what that has looked like and why my hair is all gray in the last few years. So I have personally, interestingly, also just been attracted and gravitated to sales roles over the last 15 years. Whether I've liked it or not, I have landed myself in opportunities that are sales and sales related, right? And so I got to think about, what is it that takes me back there on an ongoing basis? Do I like the strategy? Do I like the rush, the adrenaline when I sell a deal to a customer? Do I like just selling in general? Do I like creativity? Do I like meeting people? And I think this is taking from, as an extension of what Dixon was saying earlier. It's, for me, it always lands in a space where I'm in direct contact with the customer. And that is just priceless, because in terms of the value that you can add in the value chain in an organization, I think irrespective of the size, if you are talking directly to the customer, everybody in the organization is going to have to pay attention to you. So that, I think, is very, very sort of core to me in terms of how I have arrived at this place saying, this is why I do sales. And sales in Silicon Valley, I go to a lot of events where we're talking about women in STEM and women in tech. And I think that women in sales is an equally relevant subject. And you get used to hearing words like intimidating, you're a little bit aggressive, you're in sales. So I'm happy to also say that in our tiny little startup, we are an all sales revenue team, which is in 16 people, half of us are, women, and half of that half is actually driving revenue in the organization. So that's pretty awesome for a tiny little company like ours. We're also very global. So in the 16 people, we have 10 different nationalities, which is amazing. So diversity is key to us. And in the context of the work that we do, that I'll walk you through in a little bit, you'll see how it makes such a big impact. Now, what do we actually do as Unoodle is that disruption and innovation go hand in hand. We are an innovation management platform that allows for corporations to actually discover, engage, and evaluate startups that are relevant to their businesses and be able to create meaningful pilots out of them. Sounds pretty cool, but is extremely, extremely complicated. Complicated to an extent that our customers are global. They're industry agnostic, different workflows, different processes drive innovation in organizations. And our tiny little team of 16 people does all of this virtually through our technology-based products and services that are data-driven and provides actionable startups to our clients. What does all that mean? It just means that if you're a corporation and you're looking to find solutions that could help you avoid or navigate disruption, or find new opportunities through the startup world that could create new business lines, new opportunities that you could build on, you could do that using our products and services. Now, you could do that by doing an open call for startups and have them come apply to an opportunity that you're looking to fulfill, or you could do it through scouting and evaluating these startups in a way that it's relevant to your businesses and innovation life cycles. All of this put together, and like I said, it's global customers. So we're sitting in 5 different locations as a team of 16 people. So we're also distributed in that context, right? And makes it a bigger challenge in terms of delivering this value. The value proposition ultimately is co-creating something with the startups and the corporates and bringing them together in a way that it's creating impact. I think that, Dixon was touching upon one core thing that I think is very, very relevant to a tiny little organization like ours, and when we look at sales and sales enablement, is that how do we differentiate ourselves in this massive ecosystem? And whether it be consulting houses, whether it be accelerators, whether it be labs, innovation labs, whether it be innovation summits, conferences, everywhere you go, people will possibly be sounding similar to what I just said on stage here. So what is that differentiator for us, and how do we create that difference for ourselves, not just in the context of the customer, but in the context of the value proposition that we're putting in front of the customer? And that to us has always been technology, that we are a technology-driven company, that when you come to us, when you find these startups, you will find them based on technology evaluation that is possible by our data-driven products and services that can support that process. But I think there is also an element of purpose, right? Like, what is our vision? What do we want to do in this world that everybody else is constantly delivering towards? And how do we drive that purpose and vision across all of the different stakeholders that interact with our brand? For us, it has always been from the get-go that we have wanted to decentralize the way in which opportunities are available to startups, and also decentralize the way in which corporates are looking for these opportunities in startups. So that's been the fundamental sort of overarching vision for why we started, what we do, and how we have continued to do it. Of course, the products have looked different along the way. The services have looked a lot different along the way, but at least that's been the sort of driving force from the get-go, like I said. I think the other part of this is people, right? Ultimately, I think sales and sales enablement and sales leadership and sales support, sales operation, everything is about people. So how do you then enable people within your organizations to actually talk that language, be excited about the value proposition of your products and services, and take that to the customer, and then be able to translate that into revenue. Over the course of the last 8-9 years, we have struggled a lot with what does our sales org look like, or what kind of sales organization do we want to build? Does it have to be, a Renaissance salesperson that is kind of a lone wolf and is experimenting with every customer that they talk to? Or should it be that, execution team that is fully supported by marketing folks, by sales support engineers, by product marketing? And in a tiny little company like ours, as you can imagine, sometimes all of these things that I just said is one person, or is multiple people carrying different parts of that role, right? So I think there is that element that we have as an organization struggled with along the years, but I think we have now arrived at a place where we think that the way we are structured in terms of we have that Renaissance salesperson, and then everybody else is working towards building that execution team, is the path that we're experimenting with. And again, to Dixon's point, I think there is no fixed rule, there is just no fixed mantra of how this works and what can transpire out of this. I'd say as a team, we've been very quick to iterate, which is great, which is good. As a startup, you need to do that. We've been lucky sometimes. I think some chances that we took worked out well for us, which is also great. And third, I think we've attracted the right talent. That goes back to being global. That goes back to being the focus on diversity, the focus on what impact our products can actually create for our customers in the market. The third part of this, and I think that might be relevant in the context of today's discussion, is really how does all of this come together in terms of prioritizing within an organization. And priorities shift at various points in time for various teams, for various groups of people. But I think there's a few different things that could drive it. One is the overarching sort of overall vision. Where do you want to go with this? How do we want to create value? What does value mean to us? What does value mean to our customers? And how does that translate into impact? So that's one direction to take in terms of prioritizing. I think the second part of priority, without getting into, am I achieving my quarterly targets? And am I achieving my numbers? And am I achieving the goals as a sales team? While all of that is still relevant, it is also about aligning the overarching strategy to some of the on-ground tactics that are being implemented. Tactics look very different, can be implemented short-term, long-term, but have the capacity to take something powerful as a vision and translate that into revenue. I'd say the third thing about priority has always been, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And I don't mean that as an individual, but as an organization. Do we still continue to build the momentum towards that vision that we had when we started? Or do we change that along? Has that shifted along the way? And if that has, then we start aligning all of the people, all of the processes to that vision and move in that direction. So I think, I want to keep it short, and I know it's the last session and everyone's probably eager to wrap up as well. But it's definitely been a fascinating ride for me and us to see how some of these things are all rolled into one for us. And when I hear about various tools, when I hear about various strategies that were discussed over the last 2 days here, I'm like, how much of this can I even actually bring into my org, my tiny little sales org? And would it then add levels of bureaucracy that perhaps is going to come in the way of us doing our jobs in an effective manner? So I think on that thought, I'll just open it up for any questions that anyone might have on uNoodle, and we'll wrap the session up. Yeah. I did prepare a bunch of slides, but I decided to do something completely spontaneous, which is classic me.
We are going to open for questions, and I have great news. There's still the product marketing stream going on, and there's another 4 sessions that I'm going to share with you if you want to party crash next door. And there's some good ones, and I'm going to share them with you. Flash news update. Who has any questions?
Yeah.
Actually.
All good. So our team is also very small, and prioritization is an absolute nightmare. How do you make those decisions? Because it sucks.
I'm going to say wing it to no. Like I said before, I think there is an overarching sort of strategic direction that the organization is headed in, and that strategy and that vision has to drive all of the different pieces, be it product, be it sales, be it marketing, be it operations. And in small teams, that alignment has to be done, I think, a little bit more proactively, more often, and we don't have a choice but to sort of like sit with it, right, and continue to like see where it goes. So I'd say those are at least the ways in which I've dealt with it over the last few years. Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this.
Well, me or that? Like, there's no slides here. Wow.
The whole package.
Thank you.
Walk us through a typical customer coming to what they want, coming to you, and then how do you fulfill what they want?
Sure. So let's take the example of one of our current customers, that's Booking.com. And Booking.com is in the travel and industry. So when Booking.com approaches YouNoodle, they come to us and say, hey, we want to do something with startups. We want to talk to startups. We want to see what startups are building in our industry, in our verticals. We want to see how they're disrupting us. We want to see how we can find specific startups that could be aligned to our business use cases internally and maybe build a project or two together, or and then eventually look at an M&A, right? Like if that is the ultimate goal for them. So when they come to us and they say, find the startups, and they want to see global startups, how do you do that? So you put together an incentive in front of the startup world. So Booking.com calls that the Booster Program. And the Booster Program is a €2 million incentive for 10 startups that will be shortlisted in this process and have the opportunity to not just win that prize money, but also the opportunity to work along with Booking.com in some capacity. And that capacity is determined based on, of course, various engagements with these startups once they're selected to take that to fruition. In that process, here's where our technology products come into play. In the front end, it looks like a beautiful website that is presenting this opportunity to the startups, but in the back end is tied closely to our platform that is taking in all of these various applications, is allowing for Booking, that is our customer, to actually evaluate these startups based on key criteria that is relevant to their innovation process and life cycle, and ultimately then pick those top 10 that are either eligible for that incentive or to work with Booking. So that's one scenario, right? The other scenario could be, let's take the example of Nokia, right? And we run their Open Innovation Challenge. And the Open Innovation Challenge essentially is Nokia's way of finding startups in IoT that are disrupting that particular vertical and trying to see how they can, in some format, integrate them with the Bell Labs, the Nokia Bell Labs, right? So that's another completely different format where they don't do an open call, but they do a call through us where they want us to go and find these new technologies and match them to Nokia's specific request.
So you can be going through, you can be more targeted as opposed to doing an open call where they're flooded with 1,000 startups that don't have anything to do with what they're trying to do.
Absolutely. So it can be as granular as you want it to be. And I think the other thing might be of interest in the context of this conversation is that all of the startups now that are coming through our network, and we see about 14,000 startups every quarter, industry agnostic, of course, and global, coming through our network, are evaluated by experts that are either relevant to the program or outside of it. And so the data set itself is unique and curated already when you reach out to us for an engagement. Kind of like a Tinder for startups. Tinder for startups.
Shark Tank meets Match.com meets eHarmony.
Yeah.
But you're not a Tinder.
Well, we do have a product that we call the Startup Intelligence product, which is a Tinder for startups. So gain intelligence.
Anyone else? Okay, fantastic.
Cool.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.